Welcome back to Spank Ranch Garage. Back on this 410 John Deere backhoe. I want to start getting into some hydraulic troubleshooting, the reverser and the other functions, as well as tidy up a power steering leak. But before we can do that, I need to get these super hokey battery terminals squared away because this thing wouldn't start after I parked it. The dozers with the same engine have a lot more cable to them. I don't know if this is just undersized or what, but it does seem to start okay, so we'll let it roll for now. I know this ain't the right battery, but we just need something to beat around the yard until I get something better here. Man, the problems just make themselves. All right, so some of my thoughts on where I want to go next with this is, it's hard to prioritize the problems, honestly. So anyway, what I wanted to do this episode was get into the slow reverser. I don't like slipping clutches. I like a nice crisp shift, not generating a lot of heat, not wearing a lot of clutch disc, that kind of stuff. But we got to fix the more obvious issues first, like there is fuel blowing out of this high pressure line on the pump. All right, that wasn't all that tight, so that makes me feel a little better. There's one of the crush washers. Here's the other. So luckily, I actually have a bunch of these because I'm rebuilding a Rusa Master for the 350C. And that comes with these. Thankful for our little wins in life. I'm actually refilming the beginning of this video because I got distracted. When you're working on an absolute basket case like this one, it is extremely easy to start chasing your tail and going down many rabbit holes. I mean, I pulled this thing up to start looking at the reverser. I end up getting into power steering and a fuel leak and all this crap, right? So let's take it back to the basics and focus on what we need to do here. It's no secret or no surprise that this old 410 has hydraulic issues. I believe most older John Deeres will. It's just the nature of the beast. It's old, it runs at high pressure, it's been neglected, we're gonna have that. So, let's break this down to simplify it so we can come up with a plan of attack of how to fix all of this. Start it all off, this is a closed center hydraulic system on this 410. Meaning it's got a piston pump that runs on the front of the engine and it comes up to a standby pressure of say 2,500 pounds and it stays there and no fluid should be moving. Every valve, the backhoe valve, the loader valve, the power steering, the brakes, should all be tight and there's actually no flow until you open a valve to create flow. And the pump, pistons will start to move and that pressure will continue to drive your hydraulic needs. But that won't happen unless we are supplying this front pump with good supply pressure, which comes from a pump in the transmission here. This is just a standard gear pump. This gear pump also controls and provides pressure to our reverser. I want to get the reverser squared away first to make sure we have good pressure there before we even bother with the front pump. So my complaints with the reverser, it seems very slow. Now the good part of it is it holds tight. I can actually lock the brakes up and stall the engine, so the clutches are not slipping. That is good because I didn't want to have to split this tractor to put clutches and all that in it. Now that's not saying we won't have to for other reasons, but at least the reverser clutches hold in both forward and reverse. The issue is it's very slow. When you put it into forward at an idle, it might take 3 seconds to actually fully engage. It'll lag for like a second, then it'll start to pull, and then it'll lock. Reverse is a little quicker, but same characteristics. So that journey, unfortunately, is actually going to start over here on the lathe because I don't have an adapter to measure pressure on these old John Deeres. They use a 3/8 24 O-ring boss, which is a fine thread 3/8 O-ring boss. It's actually a very hard fitting to get. John Deere used to make that fitting. I went to my dealership, I asked them about it, they said they never heard of it. They checked national stock and it said 0. So nobody's buying these apparently. I think a lot of old school mechanics got these while these machines were relevant and they've just had them their whole life. I don't have one. I've been asking around, I've been searching the internet. I did find something that would work, but I couldn't get it for this weekend. So it's time to get work done. We got to make our own stuff here, unfortunately. All right, so I started by punching holes down the middle of these 3/8 24 bolts. That's AC. Wrong. I'm just welding a stainless pipe fitting to this stainless bolt, and this will allow me then to adapt to my regular gauge set. All right, and just like that, we've got our 2 adapters. 3/8 O-ring boss on this side. This goes to a Schrader because I'm going to use my standard automotive fuel pressure gauge for this, because we're only looking at pressures about 150, 175. And then I made this one, which goes to a standard high pressure hydraulic test kit fitting. And that's also got the correct thread on this side. Now I'm not pleased about this brass coupler here. I'm not sure that's going to take 2,500 PSI, so we'll have to be careful with that. But if we have an issue, we'll go out and get a steel coupler. Just trying to get started on this with what I got laying around. So we are under the machine. This is the reverser valve block here, and there's a pressure test port on the bottom here. All right, see, little 3/8 O-ring boss. Should work. Hopefully. Good. I love these Schrader to 1/8 inch MPT ports. I got 4 of these from somebody a long time ago, and I just used the crap out of them for troubleshooting stuff. Hopefully she'll fire. That's a slow climb, baby. 130 pounds. Push it into forward now. Let's see what happens. Tapers off. Finally comes back up. That's very, very slow. Alright, now we're in neutral again. Gonna go to reverse. Pressure drops. Comes back up. Let's try it with some RPM. All right, so that's kind of what I was expecting to see. It's just very lackadaisical, but we can tune that. Now, since we made 2 fittings, I want to also simultaneously check up here, and this is our charge pressure for our main pump, and that's also fed off the same trans pump, same circuit. I'm curious what we have up here. That'll help. Cold sodas. We got about 75 up front. All right, so based on the tests we just ran, we know we're getting pressure from our gear pump to this regulating valve here to the reverser, and that is regulating higher than this one to the front. So that's working by design, because as the demand on this pump changes, I'm sure that pressure is going to drop off. But you really don't need pressure there, you just need flow. And so to further complicate how this system works, this gear pump on a good day only provides 12 GPM. The pump on the front of this engine provides somewhere 25 to 30, depending on what year this thing is. So you might say, how's that ever going to work without starving? Well, the trick to what John Deere does here is when you operate a cylinder, you're displacing fluid, it's coming out the other side of the cylinder and actually going right back into the charge line for the pump. So really this pump is making up any oil differences and keeping this pump primed and also sending some through the cooler. But it does not need to flow the full capacity of this pump. And it took me a little while to wrap my head around that, and somebody taught me that, and I'm very thankful. That I'm just doing right there is not really in the manual, but what I wanted to see is when we're demanding full flow to two of the biggest cylinders on the machine, does the charge pump in the transmission keep up with it? You saw the pressure drop down to 25, but that's okay. As long as it's got pressure there, we're not starving the main pump and we're getting the full flow at full stroke. So that makes me happy to see. Right now I'm just letting this thing warm up. We're gonna let it sit there for 40 minutes, get the oil really nice and hot, and then we're gonna kind of rerun all these, see how our numbers look. All right, so engine at high idle, warm, which it is. We should see 145 to 155 on the reverser pressure. So low idle, we're about 133. High idle, so with it warm at high idle, we got 150. It's right in the middle of the spec. Bleeds off kind of slow, which is good. It may indicate the reverser valve system's still pretty tight. So I don't think we're in as bad a shape as I thought we were in a couple hours ago. I do want to improve that speed of shift though, and that sounds pretty easy. Let's get into that. All right, let's check where we're at with shift speed, and then we will tune that in, hopefully. Seeing about 3 seconds is my average reverse and forward, so I want to drop that down to about a second. Would make me feel a little better. The spec is 3/4 of a second to a second and a half. I think this is the screw. Okay, that turns pretty easy. So we're going to come out a half a turn on that. This basically is an orifice that controls how fast we can charge the accumulator. What's happening is it's just taking too long to fill the accumulator before pressure ramps back up. So we'll start with a half turn and we'll see where it leaves us. better. We're in the sub 3 seconds now. Let's go another 3/4 of a turn. All right, I'll leave that there. Averaging between 1.5 and 2 seconds. That's way better than the 4 seconds we saw before or whatever. That is very easy to adjust. You just crawl under, turn that screw. I can do that in the field if I don't like how it drives. All right, so reverser, we got figured out. We're happy with our pressure. We're happy with our accumulator charge time. Now we can move on to the meat and potatoes of the rest of the system. So we know we have good charge pressure to the pump. Never drops below 25 PSI, even when using, even when using several functions. I love that sound. So I moved our test gauge to a different port on the pump. Let's fire it up and see how our overall hydraulic standby pressure looks. It's a 4,000 pound gauge here. We're gonna fire it up, see what our standby pressure is. I'm not expecting it to be a 2,500 like it should be, but we'll see. Doesn't change when we rev it up. Not too bad. I'm gonna let this idle for another 30 minutes or so. Have a couple cold sodas. We'll see if that tapers off or not, but that's quite a bit better than I was expecting. 20 minutes later or so, we're still sitting at 2250. Problem. Not the fact that it's leaking, but the fact that there's continuous stream of fluid means that steering valve is passing. So I'm gonna have to rebuild the steering unit in this machine. Hopefully we can rectify that without replacing it. We'll see how that goes, but that's robbing some of my main hydraulic flow, so that shouldn't be happening. I also noted a valve on the loader circuit that is also getting hot. So that's leaking as well. So we're not in as bad a shape with this system as I thought we would be. Honestly, I'm very impressed. I expected to see that it would have 1,800 PSI, we'd be pissing out everywhere. It looks like we really just have a power steering issue. The loader issue may be so minuscule I can get away without fixing it, because if it's not something I can reseal and it's actually a spool problem and there's a casting issue or whatever, that's not really serviceable unless we're going to replace that valve. So I'd like to get away from that. Honestly though, all the backhoe valves are ice cold. They feel great. This thing's been running out here for probably cumulatively over an hour now. It feels okay. So I think we're looking not as bad as I thought we were. That's something else we got to deal with, but that's not the end of the world. All right, I'm going to try to rebuild this power steering cylinder if I have the right parts. So I had some clarity in my thoughts last night. I don't know for sure that this power steering valve is passing, because then I remembered that the return side is going to be the same pressure at the inlet of the pump, which we know could be anywhere from 25 to 75 pounds. So that is leaking based on that. And I don't think it's actually the valve passing, because I let this thing run for like 2 hours last night and that valve never got warm. So I don't think there's a high pressure leak there, and that's good for us. Unfortunately, whoever put this together last put the cotter pin for the steering pin in backwards, so I gotta drop the tie rod to get to it. I can't believe this isn't slopped out like everything else. All right, one grub screw. Hopefully that's all there is. Seems like it. Oh, buddy, that's not good. That is not a desirable result. Oh, that's not cool at all. It's very bad. Oh. Yeah, quick little cylinder rebuild. Let's get at it. I did not expect that. I didn't even get whacking on it yet, and that already happened. Oh, come on. I've never seen this before. What is this made of? I have never seen anything like this before, where that just chips off like it's made of plastic or cast iron or something brittle as hell. It looks like I'll get it out, but what's going to be left of it's going to be a whole nother story. Oh man, we're in a situation here, that's for sure. It's definitely cast iron, so you definitely want the right tool for this. Don't do what I did, you're gonna have a bad day. My day's just starting. This is pretty nice. It really do be like that sometimes, guys. You can't be mad, you just gotta keep powering forward. There's our gland, nice, very nice. But I think I got away without damaging the barrel or the chrome on the shaft. So all in all, this could have went worse. If I can't get a cap, then we're screwed anyway, but you know, it just is what it is sometimes. You screw stuff up, you got to figure out how to fix it, move on with your life. There's nothing left of this. Somehow, with all that nonsense, I didn't put a single mark in this chrome, which I got to be a little bit proud of. Got to find something good about that bad thing that just happened. All right, well, I just ordered the part. $239, next day air. from John Deere. So that kind of stings, but that's why we buy stuff cheap, so there's room to screw things up. Now I'm paranoid of when I got to rebuild the other side cylinder. I'm going to need to make a tool and hopefully not break that one too. But I just cannot believe they made this out of such brittle cast iron like that. I've never had that happen. I've been extremely rough getting cylinders apart before. And pipe wrenches, torches, air chisels. I've never had this happen, so it's a new experience for me. Got the part from Deere. Hope it's the same. Looks like that's what it used to be. Yeah. So, interesting stuff, and I'm learning every day, and you guys might be laughing at me because you already know this, but this particular gland, packing nut, whatever you want to call it, gland, is some type of iron, either ductile iron or cast iron. And that is, I'm unfamiliar with that. Every cylinder I've ever worked on, which has only been like 10, have had steel caps or aluminum caps, glands, whatever you want to call them. You can get rough with those. You can put a pipe wrench on them, hit them with a chisel, break them loose, crank them out, whatever you got to do. What I learned after talking to some hydraulic people that are much more knowledgeable than I is when you have a gland that does not have a wear band in it, meaning there's just a seal in here, but there's no replaceable wear bands, the gland is the consumable part. So as the cylinder wears, the rod will actually rub inside this gland. And if this was a different material, let's say this was made of carbon steel, you would damage the chrome, potentially have a galling issue with the hard steel rubbing on the hard steel. So that's why they use this either cast iron or ductile iron gland. So going forward in my life, the lesson I learned here is when I take a look at a diagram, if I don't see a wear ring in the cap and I have any question at all that it could be cast iron, I'll be very careful with it, or ductile iron. I don't see anything ductile about this, the way it was exploding, but it could have been aftermarket for all I know, who knows. So lesson learned there. If I see that it's got a wear band in the head, I know I can get rough with it. If it doesn't, assume that it's fragile and do everything you can to get this thing out in one piece. So maybe that's why John Deere actually had this thing in stock, because I don't know, probably happens to more people than just me. Taking my time cleaning these threads. Ooh, little tight spot. I want this gland to turn really nice in here, because if we got to fight it, I might break it into 60 pieces. So I'm a little stressed. Tight. Beautiful. All right, that's set in there really good. So that was the seal that was leaking. Now we got an outer seal to put in too. I usually call this like your scraper, but this is a little different than what I'm used to. It's just another U-cup seal, but you put the cup going outwards. SKF 1E42-5. Save yourself some money on that. John Deere didn't take the SKF number off. I paid like 25 bucks for that. I bet that's like a $5 seal. Use an actual tool for this. Now this probably isn't the right tool either. It's like a adjustable pin spanner, but it does fit and work. So there will be no chisel coming out on the way in. Calling that tight. That's all it takes. Now we'll get our set screw back in here to lock it, and we are looking pretty good on this job. Shame I didn't get to paint that yellow to match, but we got stuff to do. So let's fire it up and see if she leaks. To the other side. Now this one's not leaking, but you know it will be soon. So we'll try to apply some learnings from the first cylinder. Will we blow it up? Sure hope not. This one's already got pipe wrench marks on it and some rust. So the other one did not have, so maybe, just maybe, this one's a different material or it's been out more recently. Oh my goodness. Oh. All right, so I just put the set screw back in that. It's not worth breaking another one not having the right tool. So tools don't count towards the budget when I build machines or work on things. That's just part of doing work, and I need the tools anyway. So rather than blow another $250 on breaking another cap and taking hours to get it out, I will just hit that next time. It's not leaking right now. It's not as pressing as the other one was. Well guys, I'm gonna wrap this one up here for the old JD410. This was a pretty simple episode, but also a very big one for me. So getting the reverser to act right was really nice. This thing goes forward and back nice and quickly now. The brakes do like a clack when you change directions. Curious if that is standard for these units, or is that something I need to look into? If you guys have experience with the 410s, maybe the 310s, the early ones, maybe the same thing. But yeah, if I'm sitting still and I put it in reverse, I hear like two little whacks from each side of the transmission. Same thing with forward, and then I found if I touch the brake while it's moving, I get the same result. So I think it is brake related. Sounds like the discs or the pistons have a little bit of play and they're rocking back and forth in the axle housings. Otherwise, we fixed one of the fuel leaks. We still got another one to fix. Power steering is back in business. I'll rebuild this cylinder once I get the correct tool for it. If you guys know what kind of tool I need for this, I'd love to know. We checked our pressures here. Our main hydraulic pressure with hot oil is 2,250 PSI. Doesn't matter if you're idling or wide open. And that's really good to know because if you've got a lot of internal leaks within your valves and there's other things passing, you may not get full pressure at idle, but you may get it at wide open, and that's how you know you're really on the cusp of seeing some performance loss there. I think the power steering valve is actually okay. I did some more testing on that. I'm pretty confident in that. I do think the loader valve passes slightly because I do feel a little bit of warmth in that return tube kind of early in the warm-up cycle compared to everything else that stays ice cold. So that's nice. Yeah, this thing seems to work really good. I have a couple of concerns back here. One of them being the bucket curl feels very weak. I can't uncurl the bucket and lift the machine, or at least I couldn't last time I tried. but I could stick the boom all the way out and lift the machine. So I think there's probably a relief valve in one of these that's got a piece of crap stuck in it or something. Something needs attention in there. But otherwise, you know, we're getting closer to a fully functional leak-free backhoe. You know, this cap set me back another 250 bucks of what would have been like a $65 power steering rebuild, but it is what it is. Like I said, that's why we buy things cheap, so we can break them and learn how to fix stuff. You know, I've never seen that happen before, but now I know that could happen extremely easily. So one of the bigger problems we'll get into next episode is the fact that I don't have high range. The transmission will not go into high range. It goes into low range fine, goes into park fine, runs through its 4 gears on the other shifter just fine. Will not go into high range. It doesn't grind. It doesn't even feel like there's a gate there. It just feels like there's nothing. And I was reading that some of these earlier machines had an interlock, so you couldn't put it in reverse in high range. And now that, you know, this linkage has been all screwed up and I welded it back together, is there something I'm missing? Is there an interlock pin somewhere that's not allowing us to shift to high range? Maybe. If you got any experience with that, I'd love to hear what your story is, so I can get this thing fixed without too much screwing around. All right, guys, that's all I got for this episode, working on the old John Deere 410. Sometimes things don't always go your way, but we're learning every time. Like I always say, this is not a how-to channel. This is just how I'm doing it, and you can learn more from my mistakes than what I actually end up getting done at the end of the day. So let me know what you think about that down in the comments. I'll see you soon with a couple more videos on this. Thanks for watching Spank Ranch Garage.